What if the unexpected is not an interruption, but an invitation? Could technical difficulties be a surprisingly honest metaphor for life? How do we learn to meet the glitches, delays, and disappointments of life with a little more awareness, grace, compassion, and less struggle? Have you ever noticed how quickly a small technical difficulty can become a full on nervous system event? What happens inside when something does not go the way you expected right before or during the time that moment is happening?
Thanks for joining us today at the Healing Medicine Podcast. Who are you listening to? I am Dr. Jessie Mahoney, and my co-host is Dr. Ni-Cheng Liang. We are two board-certified physicians who bring decades of experience to the conversation about wellness. If you crave more ease and aspire to rediscover your love for medicine and life, one mindful step at a time, you are in the right place. We hope you'll love today's episode, and if so, please share it. A reminder that nothing in our podcast is medical advice. Welcome to our episode on technical difficulties and showing up with grace, compassion, and mindfulness. All of the questions you just asked have come up for me. I have had a slew of technical difficulties with my live stream yoga over the last few months that have ultimately resulted in having to replace all of my technology, despite efforts to repair it. And I learned a lot from having these things glitch in the moment and recognizing how they're all intertwined and how to respond in that moment when you are in the midst, literally, of teaching yoga. And this past weekend, I was giving a talk at the AMWA conference, and they had some technologic glitches. So these come up all the time, and we get to choose how we respond and what we model in that moment. Technical difficulties are a part of modern life. Your microphone might break, the internet might fail, the slide deck might not be there, it might not move forward, you might not be able to get into a meeting, your Zoom link doesn't work. Things go sideways, and suddenly we find ourselves, not always, but often, feeling frustrated, urgent, judging ourselves. In my case, I often feel unsteady. And that unsteadiness lasts. It brings a little bit of imposter syndrome, which has nothing to do with you, but you over-personalize the technologic challenge. Our invitation today is that this doesn't just happen with technologic difficulties. Life rarely goes according to plan. And we encounter these unexpected shifts and unexpected failures with our bodies, maybe our relationships, maybe our schedules, things that we counted on working that no longer work the way that they used to. So these moments are both inconvenient and they show us our patterns of reactivity and our patterns of responding to stress. You might be quick to tense. You might tell stories about what it means. You might focus on what's in your control or not. And today we want to talk about ideas about how we can meet these moments with more mindfulness and more compassion, with the hope that we will offer you a gentler way to navigate everyday disruptions. They're not pleasant, but we can meet them with more presence, discernment, and grace.
So let's slow down the experience of having some technical difficulties, whether it be literally or metaphorically. And we do that by first noticing. Oftentimes the circumstance will automatically make you notice because your slide deck will blink out or your microphone no longer works. And there is an automatic reaction that this needs to be fixed right now. I need to get my slides back up. I need the microphone to start working again right now, this moment. what can I do to solve? Or someone else needs to solve it because it's not my fault. Um, and then we have a tendency possibly to spiral after that about what that means, what other people think about us because this happened to us. So all of that is happening, but really, as you're noticing it happening, our invitation is for you to pause and notice that it's happening because it's already happening. Aha, something is amiss. Something is happening here. So, what's happening? You can name it. Maybe there's a lot of frustration and anger. There can be a tightening up in the body, a surge of adrenaline. Our fight or flight response is going off. We could automatically be blaming the tech support or the lack of tech support. There can be catastrophizing. Our negative attention bias, our lizard brain will kick online as a survival instinct. And then our cortical processing with our complex emotions. Maybe there's some embarrassment. Maybe even there is shame, grief, to cap it all off. So all of these somewhat uncomfortable emotions and thoughts are moments of mindfulness. So some approaches that might be less judgmental and more mindful could be going into something that we've talked about multiple times during our podcast, and that's taught in the mindfulness-based stress reduction curriculum, is going through a circle of awareness. So systematically approaching these difficult situations. What am I noticing in my body? Noticing the physiologic impact of the discomfort. What feelings are here? Naming the emotions, name to tame. What thoughts are arising? So, can we notice the thoughts as if they are clouds passing through the sky, leaves drifting down a stream? Easier said than done, I know, when you are trying to finish your talk in a big auditorium full of hundreds of people under a time crunch, and then your slides are gone.
And everyone's staring at you.
And everyone is like, what just happened? Why are you pausing in your talk? Why is this happening? And that goes to the next point. What story am I telling about this circumstance? And oftentimes that story that we're telling is intertwined with some false beliefs and some excessive self-criticism and blame even. So inviting in mindfulness in these moments of duress can soften the moments and make them less spiky.
Yeah. Well, and mindfulness offers self-compassion as a component of it. And so can you show up with compassion and kindness to yourself? It very likely has nothing to do with you. And even if it does, it's not the moment to drop into the blame, shame, and guilt in that it doesn't help. The other thing I heard you say, worth reiterating, is this idea of dropping back into your body. So most of us, when that happens, go to what we would call an out-of-body moment. But what we're actually noticing is that in-body moment of your heart racing and your chest tightening and that embarrassment that you can literally feel in your cells. And so simply recognizing that when we look at it mindfully from the outside, we can show up with a different lens. The opportunity here is also to focus on what is in your control and what is not. And technical difficulties bring us to this idea of what can you change and what must you accept. And in my yoga technological experience, it was this decision point of how much troubleshooting versus surrendering and doing it in a different way, or allowing it to be of less high quality and teaching the class for those people that are there, or not being able to record it. So can you let go of the resistance to reality and lean into what is the best path forward in this moment? Allowing that it's okay to be disappointed. And how do you want to show up?
I will offer the serenity prayer. And we've talked about the serenity prayer before, but I think for technical difficulties, this is a perfect opportunity to insert it again. So God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And that serenity can be a practice thing through the practice of mindfulness.
And what you practice grows. So when you practice this, accepting what is you cannot change, what's out of your control, the courage to change the things you can, and the wisdom to know the difference, to keep you out of the spinning and the panicking, and allowing yourself to show up, modeling calm and grace and groundedness in the moment. And in that moment, we are called to adapt. Whether you're on a stage or whether you're teaching yoga, it's an adaptation in the moment, which involves a couple other tenets of mindfulness: letting go and trusting, and recognizing what you need to let go of in that moment and where you need to trust yourself or trust the process. And for those of you amazing humans who do yoga with me, you watched me handle this proudly during yoga multiple times. Interestingly, first it was my camera that died, and then my microphone literally died 2 or 3 weeks later. And then my outdoor internet, which I've now moved back outdoors, is not functioning like it used to. I've solved the first 2 problems. I think I've solved the third problem, but there's also this sort of catastrophic, like, why me? What's going to break next? And I will tell you, I even came to the moment of like, maybe I'm done teaching yoga. If nothing's working anymore, maybe I'm done. But it was also a moment of curiosity where I was clearly not done. I had simply loved my equipment long enough and it was ready for a new life. But I think it's this moment in the moment of allowing things to be imperfect and choosing what you want to model, like ease and flow is what I wanted to model in yoga. And so I went with sort of accepting what could be fixed, what could I switch so that it would still work in that moment, or we could still have the class, what was most compassionate and grounded for me and for all of you. And letting it be imperfect was not that I didn't care, it wasn't giving up, it was actually caring more. And I trusted very innately in those moments that all of you were going to keep coming up because the yoga is good and tech happens, and just because things were all glitching multiple times, this was not a reflection of the class not being good or a place where I was going to be judged. I could trust the process and trust that this was happening exactly the way it was supposed to. I could also lean into exactly what was in my control. I actually just decided to let those classes go. There were some amazing classes, which sadly no longer exist. I just didn't try to salvage the recordings because it seemed like it was much more work than value. And I was able to edit those 2 moments where the internet glitched. And I also now own some better equipment, newer, higher tech equipment, actually all exactly the same that I had before because I loved it all. But then the newest tech version, which, if we think about the realities of life, of course it all broke 5 or 6 years in. Like, that's actually a long life for tech equipment, which I have carried across the country and used it in all kinds of settings. I use my equipment hard. And so just understanding that that's actually reasonable. Of course it broke. And so it was unreasonable of me to think that it would never break, and unreasonable of me to think that this wouldn't happen at some point.
As you're telling us about the longevity of your tech equipment, reminds me about the importance of acknowledging, allowing, and accepting impermanence.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
those are well beyond that warranty.
And I just want to mention, in your reality of impermanence, I also had a whole moment with this tech. I loved my tech. And that tech I bought during the pandemic when webcams were impossible to get. And my sweet husband spent a really long time researching, what Yoga with Adriene used and what I could afford that was like that. She has multiple cameras, but he got me the best one that worked for one person who wasn't going to have a camera crew, and the right kind of microphone. And I was really attached to this because this was sort of the beginning of pause and presence. And it was
Mhm.
the beginning of something that has really turned into this. The yoga has turned into this just incredibly beautiful community and experience, things I never imagined possible, like a YouTube channel and people still showing up 6 years later. Like, so that's where this grief came in. I actually had a moment of like, but I saved the top of the camera. Actually, I didn't throw it away because I have just, it's like a human, reaction to this. So yes, it's impermanent, but I also had a human connection to a piece of technology. And I think that
Mhm.
in our world today, I think that is not an unreasonable thing. Just to sort
Mhm.
of allow yourself to understand the journey that you may have been on with tech, and just thinking about that there's a lot of beauty in ordinary things like tech, and we very often, or I very often, just ignore it and don't think about it at all. And honestly, I was not appreciative of how long it functioned and how well it worked and the all of the beauty that it brought into the world. And so it felt a little bit a moment, an invitation to pause and reflect on the sort of beauty in ordinary things and sort of the love and meaning that can come from a, 2x4 piece of equipment.
There's gratitude that you mentioned there as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Exactly.
technical difficulties may be a moment for gratitude as
I love
well.
it. I love it.
There you go. So all of this mirrors life, right? This mirrors medicine. This mirrors life outside of medicine. It mirrors caregiving. It ultimately mirrors our human experience because we rarely live life as expected. And we keep doing it, even though there's all these unmet expectations and new and exciting things that happen for better or for worse. So here are some offerings for some different mindset shifts because you will encounter some technical difficulties in your life from this should not be happening to, okay, this is happening. Now what? From, ugh, everything is ruined to something unexpected is here. From, I really need this to go perfectly to, how do I want to meet this moment? And from this is just so annoying to there may be something here to notice. Ultimately, how can we all meet these moments with kindness, clarity, and intention?
We'll end, as usual, with some reflection questions. What kinds of technical difficulties tend to activate you the most quickly? What do you notice in your body and thoughts when something unexpected goes wrong? Where in your life are you spending energy trying to fix things that might need acceptance instead?
What is one place where checking in on your energy currency might be helpful in changing your response? And have you ever discovered tenderness, meaning, or even beauty in something ordinary simply breaking down?
Technical difficulties are part of life, and they are also part of being human. Things break, plans change, systems fail, recordings are lost, connections freeze. What matters is not that we avoid all disruption, but how we meet it. We can pause, we can notice, we can feel what is happening without becoming it, and we can ask what's in our control and what is not. We can choose acceptance where acceptance is needed and action where action is possible. And sometimes, in the middle of this inconvenience, we might be offered something unexpected, some tenderness, perspective, and maybe even beauty. A broken thing is not always just broken. It might be a marker of all that has been lived through it. Thank you all so much for listening today. And because we've spoken so much about yoga, I want to invite all of you to join me for yoga. It's really become an amazing community. And now I have all new tech, so we'll be practicing for a while longer. And you can join me on Zoom live stream most weekends. It's either Saturday or Sunday at 9 Pacific. And all of the classes, well, not all of the classes, but most of the classes end up recorded and put on YouTube so that you can do them at any time in the future. And these classes are a little bit different than your usual yoga. They blend in themes from this podcast. They blend in coaching. They blend in neuroscience. They blend in a lot of mindfulness. And they also blend in this absolutely amazing community of women, many of whom listen to the podcast, who have been practicing with me for 6 years now. And so a moment to honor and appreciate all of them. Because they keep coming, I keep teaching. And they've now lasted longer than the tech. And not everyone comes every time, and you would be welcomed with open arms. It's a very inclusive community where everybody belongs. And it's not every time the same people. It's a variety of people, but people have been coming for a long time, and I am exceedingly grateful for that. I also love, love, love practicing yoga in person at retreats and practicing in Muir Woods with Ni-Cheng and practicing in the yurt and practicing in my yoga studio here and out on the yoga deck and by the creek. And when you practice with me on Zoom, you get to see some of those spots depending on the weather. And it's even better in person. So we hope you'll join us this summer at Connect in Nature, or join me for a women physician retreat in Nicasio. And if this way of approaching life and the technical difficulties and things that seem like technical difficulties resonates with you, coaching is what this all is that we're talking about. Coaching and mindfulness blended together. So reach out. We would love to hear from you, and we can't wait to see you again next week.
Thanks for listening. If our message resonates, we'd love to connect further. Join us for coaching, mindfulness experiences, workshops, and retreats. Invite us to speak at your institution or conference. When you work with us, you don't just consume information, you create real change. Find Ni-Cheng Liang at Awakened Breath and Jessie Mahoney at Pause and Presence. Welcome to this mindful moment offering, inviting you to close your eyes or lower your gaze a few inches in front of you if it's safe for you to do so. If you're experiencing any technical difficulties, whether it be literally or metaphorically in life, stop. So S is to stop. T is to take a mindful breath. So inhaling through the nose and exhaling through the mouth, dragging out that exhale breath. O is to observe. You can take yourself through a circle of awareness, like the circle of an O. So noticing your body sensations in this moment of difficulty, noticing and naming the emotions that you're having in this moment, and noticing the thoughts that are arising about this moment, seeing if those thoughts can be viewed as clouds floating through the sky or leaves drifting down a stream rather than getting intertwined into the storyline, the judgment, the catastrophizing of those thoughts. And then P is to proceed with greater skillful action rather than reaction. So hopefully you can consider using the STOP acronym anytime you're experiencing technical difficulties in life. Noticing how you feel now compared to a few moments ago. Inviting you to blink open eyes, letting the light back in. Thanks so much for practicing with me.